Hello and welcome! In my view, there is no better classic series of 3D platformers than the original Spyro trilogy for the PlayStation. Over the years, I have reviewed almost every game in the original trilogy, and I loved every one of them. I thought Spyro 1 was rough around the edges, but still fantastic to play even today. And Spyro 2 was basically the pinnacle of the series, perfect in every conceivable way. So now that I get to take a look at Spyro 3, the only question that came into my head was this. How, after making a perfect game, do you add more to it? It's perfect. What can be added? Well, according to Insomniac, there was a lot more that could be added to a game, and I wanted to see what difference all that additional content can make to the overall experience. Today's video is sponsored by 16-Bit Store. At 16-Bit Store, we design and 3D print a variety of items for your video games and consoles. From our styluses to our display stands, we take pride in our designs for all products that we create and the finished quality of our prints. If you are interested or just want to help out the channel, why not visit the 16-Bit Store today? And if you use offer code 16BitReview on Etsy, you'll get 15% off your order when you buy 2 or more items. As a kid, I was amazed with all the new content that was added to Spyro 3. For me, the easiest to spot was the brand new game environments. And it made this game look absolutely amazing for the PlayStation. In fact, in my view, Spyro 3 is one of the prettiest PlayStation games on the market. But looking at the game today, I find it unsurprising how much of Spyro 2 was copied over to Spyro 3. Look carefully in the game's environments and you will start to find familiar faces, familiar objects, and familiar background details littering the overall game. If you actually want to have some fun with this whole concept of copy and pasting stuff, take your copy of Spyro 3, if you have a PlayStation playing it, take your game and swap the discs out from Spyro 3 to Spyro 2, or if you're playing Spyro 2, put Spyro 3 in. And not only will the game still be playable since the entire thing's loading off of the internal storage, but you'll also find that the game's music will switch over to whichever game you swap to's soundtrack. Now, obviously, the game might have some issues loading in new environments since you kind of did switch the disc around. It's a neat little trick that just shows you how much of this game is copied and pasted from its predecessor. Now, copying over a lamp pose or a background character from one game and blending it into the next game is one thing, but managing to copy over an entire playable character, not just a playable, the playable character, without me noticing or complaining about it, now that's a special achievement. And if Spyro is exactly the same as he was in Spyro 2, what was added to Spyro 3 to make me completely gloss over that one simple choice? As surprisingly, Insomniac was able to add quite a bit to Spyro 3 to make the game not feel like a carbon copy of Spyro 2. They were able to pull off this magnificent feat by introducing new playable characters, from Sheila the Kangaroo to Agent 9, and heck, even Sparks the Dragonfly, your in-game health meter, is now a playable character. And they do it in very interesting ways. It's not like you're just playing another copy of Spyro that just looks slightly different. The gameplay usually varies when these characters are in play. Sometimes it's just a normal 3D level with different controls or different ways you play it, but other times it can be something different, like a puzzle, or maybe a time trial, or perhaps they even change the entire genre. It's not like Spyro is missing out on all this fun too, as there are certain bonus worlds that you can visit that allows Spyro to play around with a skateboard. The sheer amount of new playable content that is in a Spyro game without deviating from the traditional Spyro formula is truly amazing to witness, and probably would have been amazing to watch as Insomniac was making it. But despite the plethora of activities that you can now do in Spyro 3 and all the new additions, I feel the game's biggest weakness is its weak bond linking the entire game together. I feel Spyro 2 just did this a little better, or at least had a better carrot for you to chase, as Spyro 2's story's strength came with the localized story from each of the unique worlds. The noisy neighbors and troublesome infighting that happens in this game made it so that you want to go through this game and figure out how to solve each inhabitant's problem. And that loosely leads to Ripto kind of running amok throughout the world. Honestly, it made Ripto as a villain a joke, since most of this game's infighting comes from the local noisy neighbors butting heads with each other. And yeah, he's there and the boss fights are menacing, but he just isn't compelling as a villain. And I feel Insomniac probably noticed that as well. And the way Spyro 3's story feels, it feels like Insomniac is overcorrecting for it. As now, it has a very good overarching narrative and complex villain. The Sorceress is a force to be reckoned with, and with her ever-prevalent Rhinoc forces everywhere in the game causing chaos and upturning worlds, it truly does feel like her influence and threat can be felt everywhere. But unfortunately, other than the Rhinocs just existing, there's really nothing that links these worlds together like it did before. The inter-world bickering and story just kind of doesn't exist. There's occasional stories that are fun, like trying to stop a wedding in Charmed Ridge, or trying to get some seals out of trouble because they stole a Rhinox submarine and crashed it. Stuff like that shows that the same writing narrative is there. It's just not as good as it was in Spyro 2. And heck, there were even some worlds that didn't even have a narrative. Even with that said, with all the new additions to Spyro 3, as a game, it's the best in the series, even with the hole in the game story compared to Spyro 2. Keep in mind, I think that game is perfect. These new additions flush out and fill the game's overall experience, making it a lot more replayable and a game that I do enjoy going back to and revisiting. But I think it's time to address the elephant in the room with this game. And I would like to say my time replaying Spyro 3, this time on the PlayStation 2, was just as fun as it always had been. But there was this one overarching issue which I had while I was replaying Spyro 3, which both Insomniac Games and Sony could never be able to predict nor be able to correct for. And that issue, which impacted the game, was decades of CD wear. The CD was a brilliant technology back in its day, and when it was new, the constant and what feels like endless music skipping, dialogue, broken audio, and every other issue that this game had, it was not an issue. I remember playing this game and I remember it not being as bad as it is. But age is hitting these older CD-based systems especially hard compared to its cartridge-based companions. And as time progresses, it's going to become harder and harder to play games even on a relatively new system like the PlayStation 2. I love playing these games on their original hardware. I work hard to make sure that I'm able to capture the gameplay from these original systems because I just enjoy playing it with the original hardware, limitations and all. But if I was to go and replay the Spyro games again, eventually it's just going to get so bad that I will be resorting to playing it on emulators. And fortunately for me, I've already backed up my games while they're still good. Now, I know emulators aren't going to be for everyone, and once upon a time, I would just recommend you to go out and buy the digital versions on the PlayStation's network for the PlayStation 3 and the PSP. But even that, nowadays, isn't a surefire solution, since you both need pretty old hardware to get onto the store, and in time, the PlayStation Store on the PSP and the PS3 might not exist for you to buy it on in the first place. But thankfully, in these past few years, Activision has been gracious enough and we're able to make a remake of Spyro for not just Spyro 1, but for all 3 Spyro games. And to release it not exclusively to Sony systems. It's available on Switch, on Xbox, and on computers for the first time ever, officially. I've played through the Reignited trilogy, and I'm going to be honest, at its worst, its absolute worst, it's as good as the original game. And at its best, it is a sight to behold and a welcomed improvement to the original. Now, with all that said, if you are planning on playing the PlayStation original release in North America, aim for the greatest hits or collector's edition of the game, since it has all the bug fixes and it fixes, in my view, the biggest mistake of the original game, which was missing songs that are on the disc. If you can't get your hands on an original PlayStation version or just don't want to deal with the hassle of aging hardware, the Reignited trilogy is also a good option too, if you want a one-stop shop to play and buy all of your Spyro game needs. But anyways, thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you have yourself a good day, and as always, take care.